I suppose everybody can recall a time in their youth or childhood when they visited the zoo or a safari park. I went several times myself, but one visit I recall was as an adult, taking my own children to London Zoo, I think. It was a beautiful, warm, sunny day, I remember, and I took great joy in sharing with my kids those moments of discovery and wonder at the sight of an astonishing variety of animals. Somewhere along the line, we came across the apes. I remember the sign that said, "The next chimpanzee's tea party will be at 3 p.m. today." But it was the last cage that I saw that left the biggest impression on me that day. Gorilla was the star of the whole zoo, and there was a crowd of people watching and tuttering, interspersed with occasional oohs and ahs. Curious, I got as close as I could to the cage and held my daughter aloft on my shoulders so she could get a better look. It was a family scene of 3 gorillas. The onlookers were fascinated because the female had only recently given birth and was holding a tiny black baby gorilla to her breast. But the baby was sated and really wanted to play. She wasn't at all shy, though, and for a few moments stared into her human audience with unabashed fascination. My daughter shrieked with excitement and waved at the ape, but soon expressed disappointment when the baby just stared back at her for a moment before looking away. And what took my attention was the adult male gorilla, baby's dad, who seemed utterly absorbed and fascinated at the sight of his offspring, and he reached over to take the baby from Mum for closer inspection. Mother seemed to hesitate at first, but it was only for an instant before she let her infant be picked up. Baby gorillas look so comical. They have big faces with enormous eyes and a shock of hair on their head. She looked tiny and helpless compared to her giant father, and when Dad picked her up, by the left leg I think, I did wonder if the youngster would be safe in the hands of this brute, who by now was sniffing her all over as if she were a toy. But he was so very gentle, and the look on his face was so full of intense curiosity and wonder as he poked a finger under his infant's chin, then held her head in his hand as he stroked her back. It was as if he was in awe at the sight of this beautiful new arrival, whose only interest at that moment was to play with Dad. It reminded me of that sense of awe and wonder I experienced myself at the birth of my own children. The curiosity I had felt, a kind of astonishment that another human creature had come into this world as if by magic. We have to be wary of imposing human feelings on an animal, but I felt sure I knew how that gorilla felt at that moment, and I empathized with him in just the same way as I would any human father. This so-called brute could have crushed the baby's head with as little effort as I might crush a grape. But I knew that tiny infant could never be safer than in her father's immensely powerful arms. It appeared to me to be such a gentle, loving moment, a time of bonding, a new father with a new baby. I found it quite moving, and it brought my own memories flooding back to me. As I left the zoo, I thought of those creationists whose scriptures tell them that animals are creatures quite apart from human beings, and one particular Muslim cleric I met recently who sneered at the very idea that we might be related to brute apes. But I left that zoo with a feeling of kinship, of how close we were, how obvious it was, and how privileged I felt to be related to such a creature. Evolution is wonderful and amazing. It's also true, and obviously so, to anyone who is prepared to open their eyes and observe with honesty. This creature was no brute. This was my cousin. Treat him with dignity and compassion. Treat him with respect.